misconceptions about atheism. Survey after survey shows that atheists are among the most distrusted people in America and around the world. It really goes without saying that atheists have a severe PR problem. This video is aimed at help addressing some of those and clearing up some of those misconceptions. One of the most common misconceptions is that there can be no morality without God, and because atheists have no God, atheists are therefore immoral. I'd like to address this now. Thunderfoot made a wonderful example when he invoked the piranha. Piranhas are ferocious creatures capable of devouring vast amounts of meat in a relatively short amount of time, yet we never see them attacking one another. Why exactly is this? Did God give the piranha some magical law stating that thou shalt not kill other piranhas? No. It basically works because piranhas are a community species. They work together as a group. And if they were to just freely go about killing each other because they were hungry, all of them would suffer as a result of it. Another link, I guess, of this is the only reason that you do not kill another person because you believe in God, and this is, of course, directed at people who believe in faith. If the only reason you are not going out raping, murdering, and killing is because of God, then you need some psychiatric help, and that's really indisputable. Another thing to look at is if God and Christianity in particular is a source of morality, wouldn't we expect the Ten Commandments to be a little bit better of a moral guide? I mean, the first 4 or so are nothing but talking about the rage of a jealous God. That's hardly relevant to morality. It doesn't involve suffering or anything like that, and quite frankly, I find it a bit hypocritical and just silly that an almighty, omnipotent creator of the universe has such an ego problem. Secondly, if you also take a look at the Ten Commandments, there's nothing in there about child abuse, nothing in there about rape. Indeed, these are vastly immoral acts that aren't mentioned, so if Christianity and God in particular were the source of morality, wouldn't we expect to find that? Indeed, human beings we do have a set of moral laws, and it's basically because we're communal individuals. We rely on the strength of a population for our strength, and if we go out and engage in antisocial behavior which undermines the overall survival and fitness of the population, we ourselves are weakened. That is why we have these moral laws. It's not because of God. Another common claim is that most of the atrocities that happened in the 20th century were due to atheism. Let's take a look at Hitler. And Hitler's reactions and Stalin's actions and all the atrocities that accompanied them were the result of atheism. Well, this claim is false for a number of reasons. First, Hitler was also a vegetarian. Why do you not go and say that he was due to him being a vegetarian? Correlation does not imply causation, and that's a very important principle. Now, interestingly enough, let's take a look at the other side of the coin, and that is that religious people are commonly committing atrocities. 9/11 is a wonderful example of this. So the distinction here is that if somebody is an atheist and they commit a moral atrocity, they don't do it because they are an atheist, they do it because they're an evil person. There's no logical connection there. There's no reason, just because you don't believe in a God, for you to go out and do all sorts of immoral acts. That's evil. There is, however, a logical, causal correlation between religious people and them doing the immoral acts that they see. The skyscrapers in New York were blown up because of religious actions. These suicide bombings happened solely because of religion. You are a good person in the eyes of religion if you do them. And this is a big distinction. With atheism, there is no causal effect there, whereas with theism, there absolutely is. It's also probably worth pointing out, particularly in the case of Hitler, that he was a Roman Catholic, and indeed most of the people around the country in Nazi Germany committing most of these atrocious acts were not atheists, they were Catholic. Also adjacent to both of these points is that if religion is necessary for morality, when we look at the world, what exactly would we expect to see? It logically follows that, 3 things we would see. One is that in prison, there would be a much higher percentage of atheists in prison than there are in the natural population. Also, we would expect to see countries with a higher rate of atheism to have a higher rate of social ills. In other words, the more atheistic that a country is, the higher the abortion rate, higher murder, higher crime, higher drug use, all of those things. And the other thing that we would expect to see is over time, as a country in and of itself becomes more or less religious over time, we would expect to see a change in morality, and again, the social ills that I mentioned before. So what happens? Let's take a look at the prison populations. Atheists make up 16% of the population, yet only 0.5% of the prison population. This is a massive difference that we simply don't see in every other faith. For example, if Catholics make up 35%, their constituency of the prison population is also 35%. This trend remains true with the exception of atheism. So the more atheistic you are, the less likely you are to be in prison for social ills, crime, etc. As far as countries goes, there's survey after survey after survey showing that the more atheistic a country is, the less crime and the less evil that occurs in that society. Once again, this completely contradicts the claim that atheism and morality cannot coexist. If anything, it could be claimed that, on a whole and as a general rule, atheists are more moral and less likely to commit crime than others. The next most common misconception is that atheism requires faith. You have to have faith to become an atheist, and therefore atheism is just like a religion. And the answer to that is no. That's absolutely absurd. Atheists simply don't see any evidence for God and therefore don't believe in him. Do you believe that it requires faith for you not to believe in Santa Claus? Well, atheism is basically the same way. Just as it requires no faith to believe that there isn't a Santa Claus, it requires no faith to believe that there isn't a God. Another common claim is that perhaps America would be much better off if we simply shipped off all the atheists and got rid of everything. Well, let's look at that. Atheists make up the profound majority, I'm talking like 90-something percentage of the National Academy of Science. That is, the most educated, productive members of society tend towards atheism as opposed to the baseline value. Another thing, take a look at the prison populations. We certainly wouldn't be emptying them out. Indeed, we'd be emptying out a much higher percentage of the natural population than there is in prison. Indeed, much of the country's science and their intellectuals and the backbone of it does stem from atheist creativity, and not the other way around. So removing atheists from a country would essentially intellectually bankrupt it. Lastly, I wanted to address this idea that atheists are intolerant. Now, let's just take a look at this for 1 second, because all atheists want to do are say, look, let's take a look at the default position of there not being a God, which is atheism. I mean, that's the null hypothesis, that there is no God, and let's examine the evidence for it. And can that evidence overcome the null hypothesis? There's nothing intolerant about that. On the contrary, however, every single instance of homophobia, subjugation of women, female genital mutilation, and etc. stem from the religious. Abortion doctor killings, atheists aren't really doing them. Inhibiting stem cell research and effectively killing people, atheists aren't really responsible there. Atheists also aren't the ones telling people that they're going to burn in hell. I could hardly picture a more intolerant statement. Fatwas being issued against people who write books and illustrate cartoons, again, that's done on behalf of the religious, and almost exclusively on behalf of the religious, not done by atheists. And I can't recall the last time I've seen an atheist burn books. It's very hypocritical for a religious person to claim anything is intolerant simply because their institutions are the cornerstone and the cause of the vast majority of intolerance in society today. The next common statement is that atheists should simply back off because a belief in God requires faith, and faith is outside the realm of discussion. Well, Sam Harris did a wonderful dissection of this and noted an inconsistency. That is, if I were to tell you that I believe that Elvis is still alive, and you asked me why, and I made the claim, oh well, it's not a scientific claim, it's a metaphysical claim, or Elvis still being alive gives my life a lot of reason and meaning, and Elvis was a great moral teacher, or Elvis being still alive gives me a lot of hope, or any of the dozens of reasons that a belief in God is justified by religious people, when you apply it to anything except for that, I mean, you're laughed at, essentially. So why is a belief without evidence considered good? Why is that not able to be discussed? It absolutely should be, because it's no different than anything else. However, when it's put in the context of religion, it's off the table. Lastly, I wanted to address this idea that atheists are intolerant. Now, let's just take a look at this for 1 second, because all atheists want to do are say, look, let's take a look at the default position of there not being a God, which is atheism. I mean, that's the null hypothesis, that there is no God, and let's examine the evidence for it. And can that evidence overcome the null hypothesis? There's nothing intolerant about that. On the contrary, however, every single instance of homophobia, subjugation of women, female genital mutilation, and etc. stem from the religious. Abortion doctor killings, atheists aren't really doing them. Inhibiting stem cell research and effectively killing people, atheists aren't really responsible there. Atheists also aren't the ones telling people that they're going to burn in hell. I could hardly picture a more intolerant statement. Fatwas being issued against people who write books and illustrate cartoons, Again, that's done on behalf of the religious, and almost exclusively on behalf of the religious, not done by atheists. And I can't recall the last time I've seen an atheist burn books. It's very hypocritical for a religious person to claim anything is intolerant simply because their institutions are the cornerstone and the cause of the vast majority of intolerance in society today. Thanks a lot for your time, guys. I hope this helps clear up many of the common misconceptions about atheism. Coincidentally, I'm actually looking for an illustrator for my book, or a publisher, so if you have any connections in the publishing field, or if you're a competent illustrator, please send me a PM. I'd greatly appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.